2023 has been an incredible year for VR. Looking back, we've had multiple huge established IP debuting in virtual reality for the very first time, exciting new VR hardware from multiple big players in the gaming industry, unique new titles that truly showcase how amazing the medium can be, and I won VR Content Creator of the Year. So all in all, I'd say it's been a pretty solid year. Seriously though, this year has been phenomenal, and I have struggled to make this list of my top 10 favourite VR games of the last 12 months. It should go without saying, but this list is completely subjective. My own personal preferences and tastes have formed it, so don't come for me with pitchforks raised if your favourite VR game isn't here. However, if you want to take part in a bigger, more in-depth ranking of every VR game that launched in 2023, then keep your eyes peeled, because me and Gamertag VR are planning something. But for now, let's dive into my top 10 favourite VR games of 2023. In at number 10 is a game that made me feel all of my feelings. This is Before Your Eyes for the PSVR2. Now, if you're a human, or any living creature really, I'm sure you'll agree that the passing of time, the ever unstoppable passing of time, is a fairly terrifying concept and something that we all have in common. It's something that we all have to deal with. We can't slow it down, we can't stop it, it marches on whether we want it to or not. And Before Your Eyes captures that feeling, bottles it, and turns it into an impactful and powerful VR game that showcases exactly what it's like to live a life. Now, I still feel like that same kid I was 20 plus years ago, but when I look in the mirror, there's a full-grown man looking back at me, and this game captures that feeling of time slipping away before you realise it perfectly. It doesn't feel like time is moving as fast as it does, but blink and all of a sudden, years have slipped by. Before Your Eyes uses the PSVR2's eye tracking technology perfectly. Every time you physically blink in-game, time leaps forward and you lose weeks, months, or even years of your digital life. I urge everyone to try this game. If you have a PSVR2, it's such a worthwhile experience, but it is a hard-hitting tale. In at number 9, it's the racing game that made me love racing games. Gran Turismo 7 in VR finally made me understand why so many love the VR sim racing scene and genre. Of all the genres of gaming, racing is typically the one I reach for last. It's never clicked with me. But then, from the very first moment that I sat down in front of my Logitech G29 steering wheel, placed the PSVR2 headset on my head and booted up Gran Turismo 7, it all started to make perfect sense. The visuals in this game are immaculate. The small details, like being able to look in all of the mirrors and they actually work the way they should. The feeling of speed and genuinely the feeling of presence, of actually existing in these locations, sitting behind the wheel of these vehicles. It's all so perfectly executed. And this is one of my favourite games to show friends now. Whenever someone comes over who isn't super sold on the concept of VR, sitting them down with a steering wheel and putting them into Gran Turismo 7 immediately changes their minds. It shows them the power of this medium, and their shrieks of joy and laughter is enough to tell me that this is one of the best VR games on the market right now. It's also absolutely stacked in terms of content, and I can see myself and many others playing this for years to come, or at least until they release Gran Turismo 8. In at number 8, it's one of the best VR single-player story-driven shooters of all time, not just 2023. This is Vertigo 2, a game so packed with creativity, humour, polish and ambition, you'd almost be forgiven for thinking it was made by a full team of VR veterans backed by the funding of someone like Meta or Sony. But the truth is, this entire experience was made by one man. One exceptionally talented man, but one man nonetheless. Vertigo 2 wears its inspirations on its sleeve proudly. It feels like a greatest hits of some of the most iconic shooters of all time, wrapped in its own unique packaging. From the most obvious inspirations like Half-Life to things like Time Splitters and Bioshock, you can feel the love, care and passion for the genre in every frame of the experience. PCVR owners have been able to soak up this one for a few months now, but PSVR2 PS2 owners still have this gem of a game to look forward to as it's releasing in the next few weeks. If you've been dying for a lengthy single-player VR adventure with a unique setting, genuinely funny writing, and some seriously cool gunplay, then you owe it to yourself to check out Vertigo 2. Honestly, one of the year's finest VR games. In at number 7 is a game that I had very low expectations for. This is Assassin's Creed Nexus. Now honestly, I went into this not expecting a huge amount. I thought it was going to suck. I'd heard reports previously that the game wasn't in great shape and that people should lower their expectations, so I did accordingly. And then I played it, and I was pleasantly surprised. No, scratch that. I was genuinely blown away by just how much they'd achieved on standalone hardware with this brand new, full-fledged Assassin's Creed game. I really thought that the best we were ever going to get from this project was a small-scale, mini-game style spin-off set in the Assassin's Creed universe. But what we actually got was a proper single-player Assassin's Creed game with the length you would expect from one of the older mainline Assassin's Creed entries. It throws you into the boots of 3 iconic assassins and allows you to play how you want to play. If you want to be stealthy, you can be. If you want to be chaotic and slice down everyone you see, you can do. And if you want to climb to the top of the tallest building and throw yourself off into the nearest haystack, you can also do that. As a lifelong Assassin's Creed fan, this game is absolute wish fulfillment. Extracting and retracting your hidden blades in VR feels as amazing as you would imagine, as does leaping from the top of a building to assassinate an enemy on the ground. Nexus absolutely shattered my expectations and ended up being a showcase for exactly how incredible standalone VR can be. My surprise at this game's level of polish and content-rich offering is definitely a factor in it landing so high on this end of 2023 list. I am a horror fiend, and I must say we've been blessed with some fairly spectacular VR horror games in 2023. A few Resident Evils, a new Five Nights at Freddy's, a new Arizona Sunshine, and a bunch of excellent indie horror adventures. There have been plenty of spooky games to keep us busy. However, only one truly scared me. Only one actually made me feel fearful to progress or walk down the corridors of its beautifully disgusting location. In at number 6 is Propagation Paradise Hotel, a genuinely terrifying single-player adventure that throws players into a hotel filled to the brim with zombies and hideous monstrosities in search of your sister who is trapped somewhere on the higher floors of the building. Paradise Hotel so perfectly captures the same vibe and feeling of classic Resident Evil games that at times I could have sworn it was a spin-off to those games. The inventory and consumables management, the atmosphere that you can cut with a knife, the dark hallways that hide horrible creatures just lying in wait. It felt like stepping foot into the Spencer Mansion for the first time again, only this time it was in VR and I was far more terrified. If you're a fan of classic survival horror or just want a VR game that will scare you senseless, then you have to check out Paradise Hotel. The only reason it doesn't land a little higher on this list is due to that cliffhanger of an ending. I need a damn sequel ASAP. Now, I don't think that any of these best VR games lists can be controversial, because ultimately it's just one person's preference, one person's personal taste. But if anything on this list was going to be controversial, it would be this one. In at number 5 is PowerWash Simulator VR. Now I know this game won't appeal to everyone, but for me personally, this is the perfect escapist, relaxing, switch off your brain and chase the dopamine hit of that little ding noise kind of game. I've sunk over 30 hours into PowerWash Simulator VR, and I'm hoping they release all the fantastic DLC that the flat game has, because I need more locations to clean. It's a tough one to explain to the majority of people. At the end of the day, it's just cleaning stuff, going to a location and washing away the dirt until it's gone and everything is clean. Then you rinse and repeat. But for me, this game offers a kind of serene, chill-out atmosphere that so few games do, and in VR, it's one of the few games that I'll sit on the sofa and play. PowerWash Simulator VR, potentially my controversial number 5 pick. Taking an existing game and reimagining it is always a tricky task, especially when the game in question is a cult classic that plays more like an interactive movie than a video game, that released over 20 years ago for a system that many younger people probably have no memory of, and one that relied primarily on live action FMVs to tell the story. Quite the undertaking indeed. However, there's a reason the Seventh Guest VR sits in my number 4 spot this year, and the reason is simply because Vertigo Games absolutely nailed it. They took something that was beloved by many and likely unheard of to a younger generation and reimagined it in a painstakingly wonderful way, complete with modern FMV sequences rendered in full 3D that will blow your socks off in VR. The Seventh Guest VR is one of the best story-driven puzzle games I've ever played, with fantastically cheesy acting throughout, devious puzzles that will challenge you in fair and solvable ways, beautiful environments that twist and change whenever you shine your torch around them, and a soundtrack that you'll be humming for weeks after rolling the credits. Simply put, The Seventh Guest is Vertigo's best game in a year where they also released the excellent Arizona Sunshine 2 and Hellsweeper, so that should tell you everything you need to know. Honestly, everyone with a VR headset should embark on this light horror adventure. It's that time once again, you saucy bunch of sausages. Thank you to SideQuest for sponsoring this video and for bringing me another year packed with apps, experiences, giveaways and community support to enhance my standalone VR hardware. If you don't know what SideQuest is by now, then you've probably been living in a small cave somewhere, licking frogs for sustenance and using your VR headset as a vanilla device without all the incredible enhancements and tools that SideQuest offers. Come to think of it, what kind of Wi-Fi coverage do you get in that cave? Must be a right pain in the butt to download new games. Although I imagine the available space to stretch out and play must be wonderful. So, swings and roundabouts, I suppose. SideQuest is the all-in-one tool and digital storefront that's designed to unlock the full potential of your standalone VR headset, whether you want to discover hundreds of new games that aren't available anywhere else or browse exciting new AAA titles. From free indie experiences all the way up to paid main store releases, you can always find something new and exciting to play on SideQuest. But it isn't just about the games. SideQuest also helps you to get the most out of your VR headset, from managing internal data, backing up save files, increasing the quality of video captures, and running ADB commands to alter the way your headset works. You can gain full control of your device thanks to the suite of features available to you. And best of all, SideQuest is completely and utterly free. It won't cost you a penny to start using the service today. All you need to do is choose where you'd like to download the app. It's available on PC, browser, mobile phone, or even directly available inside your VR headset for the most immediate access to the wealth of content it houses. Now, once you've installed SideQuest, go on, do it now. It's easy, and it will only take you a few seconds. Done? Good. Now you should search for Banter on the SideQuest storefront and install that too. Banter is a brand new physics-driven social experience for VR and flat-screen players. It's a place where you can kick back and hang out with friends or choose to meet someone new in a wide range of exciting locations, each with unique features, games to play, and objects to interact with. Think VR chat mixed with Boneworks, and you've got a pretty good idea of what Banter is all about. The team behind Banter have been running an insane giveaway for a few weeks now, and we're approaching the end. But there's still time to get involved and win yourself a huge prize. Each week until Christmas, so one more week, a Quest 3 will be given away to a random user who is playing Banter at the time the draw takes place. So someone this week will win a Quest 3 just for playing the game. It's the last chance, so start playing now, stop wasting time, and it could be your very own Christmas miracle. Now, back to the main event. Before we get to the top 3, I want to shout out a few games that didn't quite make the top 10 cut. My first honourable mention goes to Sushi Ben, a slice of life VR game that makes you feel like you're inhabiting a living, breathing manga or comic book, with vibrant visuals, lovable characters, and a relaxing vibe that's easy to get lost in. I actually set up to record some gameplay coverage of this game for the channel, but ended up not speaking in the recording. I was too invested in just listening to the characters speak and enjoying the story, so I scrapped the video, but I loved the game. It's a story-heavy one with lots of reading and listening, but it's a serene escape and feels almost Animal Crossing-esque in its laid-back tone. Up next, we have Resident Evil Village, a wonderful VR version of an excellent modern Resident Evil game. Now, in any other year, this probably would have ended up on my overall top 10. It looks gorgeous, plays wonderfully, and has a fantastic coat-based inventory system that I wish made an appearance in more VR games. However, another Resident Evil VR game just dropped, and ultimately I'd say that new one is better, which resulted in Village being knocked out of the top 10. Another Fisherman's Tale is another VR game that made me feel so many feelings in 2023. The story of remembering a parent and reliving all the adventures you had with them as a child is so poignant and wonderfully told in this visually stunning VR puzzle game, and the puzzles themselves are amongst the very best I've encountered in VR. Detaching various body parts and throwing them around to solve environmental puzzles is a genius gameplay mechanic. Dungeons of Eternity took me by surprise in the best way possible. I expected it to be fun, but I didn't expect it to be as addictive and polished as it ended up being, and ultimately this is probably my favourite co-op VR game of 2023. Plundering randomly generated dungeons for better loot whilst fighting alongside a couple of friends has never been this fun, and thanks to a visual upgrade option, it looks gorgeous on the Quest 3. In any other year, Synapse would have made the top 10, but damn, 2023 has been incredible. Synapse is the first PSVR2 game to truly show me what's possible with that hardware in particular when you get all the tech working perfectly together. When eye tracking, haptics and adaptive triggers collide in VR, you can create some genuine magic, and Endreams showcased that beautifully here. The reason it didn't quite crack the top 10 is because it ended up being more of a roguelike than a story-driven adventure, and these mechanics are crying out for something more substantial. There is a growing sentiment in the VR community that we're all tired of roguelike or roguelite games. I'm personally a massive fan of the genre, and even I can see that we've reached a point where more often than not a new VR game opts for the procedural rogue route rather than the plotted and planned story experience. I can understand why some are getting a little fed up of this tried and tested formula. However, forget all that nonsense and hear me out on my number 3 pick for 2023. The Light Brigade, the VR roguelike to rule all VR roguelikes, arguably the only game you need within this genre for your VR platform of choice. A VR roguelike that feels so damn good to play and keeps you hooked for hours with its perfect execution of the one more run mentality. I knew the Light Brigade was something special from the very first moment I played it. The way the guns feel, the way they sound, the visual aesthetic and the sheer polish that the game proudly sports. It's such an excellent, punchy and addictive package wrapped in more unique style than most VR games I've ever played, and it doesn't pull its punches either. The Light Brigade offers up some of the most challenging environments and boss encounters I've played this year, and the devs have been committed to growing the game out with additional content, new weapons, locations and continuous challenges. If you want just one roguelike game for your VR headset, if that's all you need, then I'd urge you to make that game the Light Brigade. I highly doubt you'll regret that choice. There was a tough internal battle raging between my number 2 and number 1 picks. It was not an easy decision to make, because these next 2 games for me, personally, are the epitome of what I feel VR can be, the pinnacle of the medium in terms of immersion, atmosphere and content offering, a truly exciting look at just how good this medium can be. In at number 2 is Asgards Wrath 2. Now I don't feel too bad putting this in at number 2 because the developers at Sanzaru were just awarded a 10 out of 10 for this game from IGN. So they've had plenty of praise recently, and that 10 out of 10 should be enough to tell you that this game is something special. To my knowledge, the only other VR game to be awarded a perfect score from IGN was Half-Life Alyx. So yeah, that's a pretty big deal. Asgards Wrath 2 is a genuine miracle, a game that somehow manages to pack 100 plus hours of single-player action-adventure RPG gameplay into a standalone headset, whilst only taking up around 32GB of storage space, running almost flawlessly continuously, and looking breathtakingly impressive. It has more content than most of 2023's VR lineup combined, and those looking for a meaty RPG experience will no doubt be returning to Asgards Wrath 2 for years to come, thanks to planned events and updates that will bring players back with new unlockable gear several times every few months. From the combat to the visuals, the RPG mechanics to the voice acting, the music to the slick, smooth traversal, this really is a system seller for Meta, and a shining example of what the Quest 2, 3 or Pro are capable of. My only real gripe with this game is the marketing choice to call it Asgards Wrath 2. Like, I know that's technically what it is, but so many haven't played the original and can't play the original on Quest standalone devices, so calling it something new and catchy may have helped to spread the appeal of this exceptional game. But to be honest, that 10 out of 10 will probably do enough. In any normal year for VR, a Resident Evil VR game would sail to the top of my list with no real issues. It wouldn't even be challenged due to just how much I love this series and how well these games work in VR. Heck, even the mods are exceptional and they aren't even official products. But this year was different. This is the year where VR really stood up and made itself known. It was a much harder fought battle, and I flipped back and forth on this list several times due to just how incredible so many of the games on it are. But ultimately, Resident Evil 4 Remake VR came out on top because boy oh boy do I love this game. Resident Evil 4 holds a special place in my heart. I purchased the game on launch day for GameCube and it rocked my socks off. I never knew a horror game could move so fast or focus in so much on the action. I never knew an action game could feel this good to play or look this incredible. Resi 4 did for the horror genre what Mario 64 did for platformers and 3D games in general. It showed that young version of me just how spectacular these games can be and transformed my love of the genre and video games in general into something wholly different. But now in 2023, as a 36-year-old man, I can step into that game, reimagined, upgraded, looking closer to real life than ever before, and I can traverse these locations that I know so well. It's the same feeling I had when Meta launched their own version of RE4 VR, but in a lot of ways it's better. The action is more intense, the visuals more impressive, the haptics of the PSVR2 makes it more immersive. It's the ultimate Resident Evil experience for someone who has loved this franchise for many, many years, and it's a game I will play over and over again. Some might say PSVR2 has had a rocky first year, but if they can put out 2 or 3 games of this quality each year, I for one will be a very happy owner. And that brings me to the end of the video. These are my top 10 VR games for 2023. What an incredible year. If you think there's a game that should have been on this list that wasn't, trust me, I probably considered including it. I cannot remember another year that's been this strong for new VR games, new VR hardware, and the industry in general. Let me know down in the comments below which games you would include on your top 10 lists. I'm excited to see them all, and I hope you all have an amazing Christmas and a happy new year. Take care, and I'll see you next time.